kept this story to myself for many years, not because I didn't want to tell it, but because every time I remember it, I feel the water looking at me again. I was born in a small settlement on the banks of a wide river in the Peruvian Amazon. I grew up listening to stories about the jungle, about spirits that protect the forest and punish those who harm it. But of all those stories, there was one that always turned my blood cold, the story of the Yakumama, the mother of the water, the giant serpent that lives in the deepest part of the river and swallows whole anyone who dares to defy her. As a child, I thought it was just a story told to keep us away from the river alone, until the night I understood that some legends exist for more than just scaring people. I was about 19 years old. Life was simple back then. Help on the farm, fish, occasionally take people upriver in the small motorboat. No electricity, no internet, just the sounds of the jungle and the river that never went quiet. One afternoon, a man from the city arrived at our settlement. New boots, clean shirt, confident smile. He said he was a researcher, doing a study on jungle myths. He sat down with the village elders, pulled out a recorder, and started asking questions. Is it true that people here believe in a giant serpent? He asked, laughing. The elders looked at each other. Don Eusebio, the oldest, fixed him with a serious stare. We don't believe, he said. We have heard her. Have you seen her? The man pressed. Seen her completely? No. Nobody comes back to tell that story, the old man answered. The outsider smiled with amusement. He said it was all exaggeration, that science had recorded no creature of that size, that if anything existed, it was just a large anaconda, nothing more. I was nearby, listening to everything, and that's when the man turned toward me. You, boy, do you know how to handle a boat? Since I was little, I answered. Good. Tomorrow at dawn, you take me upriver. I want to record sounds, take photos. Depends on where you want to go, I said. To wherever they say that, what do they call her? Yakumama. When he said that name, several people stopped talking. Even the chickens seemed to stir. Don Eusebio stood up and walked over to the outsider. Son, he said, if you're going to go to that side of the river, go in silence. Don't shout her name. Don't strike the water. Don't throw any garbage. And above all, if you hear a strange rumbling, like the river is roaring, turn back. Don't keep going. The man laughed. Don't worry, grandfather. If I see her, I'll take her photo. In the eyes of the elders, I saw something that wasn't simple fear. It was respect, like they were speaking about someone who genuinely lived down there in the deep. That night, I struggled to sleep. I knew the place the outsider wanted to go was a part of the river where almost nobody went. They called it heavy water. They said the river swallowed things faster there. Some people swore that on certain early mornings the water would rise on its own, as if something enormous was breathing underneath. At dawn, the man was already on the bank with his pack, his cameras, and an excitement that didn't fit the place. The sky was still pale, thick with low clouds. The fog clung to the river like a veil. We got into the boat. I took the motor. He sat at the front, pointing his camera at the jungle. What's your name? He asked. Luis. I'm Armando. Today we're going to find out if your monster is real, Luis. I didn't answer. I just looked at the river. We traveled for hours. The sun tried to break through, but the clouds kept swallowing it, The motor mixed with bird song and the distant screech of a monkey. In some stretches the river opened wide. In others it narrowed, and branches almost brushed our heads. Past midday, we reached a different zone. I don't know how to explain it, but the atmosphere changed. The water looked darker, thicker somehow. The wind stopped. The sounds of the jungle dropped, as if everything was listening. "This is the place," I said without meaning to. "This is where your Yakumama lives?" Armando joked. "She's not mine," I answered. Armando pulled out a small recorder and switched it on. Then he picked up a long stick, leaned over the side of the canoe, and started striking the surface of the water. "Hey, Mother of the Water," he shouted, "come out for the photo." I snatched the stick from him. "Don't do that." "What's the matter? Are you scared?" "You don't shout her name here. You don't provoke her. And what? You want her to stay hidden?" Armando laughed again, but his laugh disappeared quickly, swallowed by a heavy silence. The river seemed to have gone still, too still. We floated there without moving. Armando kept recording, murmuring into his camera, describing the landscape. I just watched the water. Then I felt it. At first it was just a slight movement, like an unusual current. The boat rocked from side to side, gentle but constant, like something enormous passing underneath. Not the normal current of the river, not a floating log. It was like a breath. "Did you feel that?" Armando asked, serious for the first time. "Yes." The water began forming small waves, radiating from a single point a few meters ahead, as if something was rising from the bottom. "Must be a large school of fish," Armando said, but his voice no longer sounded so sure. Then we heard it. A deep, thick sound that rose from the water like a smothered roar. Not any animal I knew, not thunder, not wind. It was like the bellow of something enormous that had been sleeping for far too long. The boat shuddered. The wooden planks creaked. I switched off the motor. "Armando," I said, "we're leaving." Wait. This is pure gold," he whispered, pointing the camera toward where the waves were coming from. The water began to rise. A kind of whirlpool formed. The fog, instead of clearing, concentrated around it, as if trying to conceal what was coming out. I saw the shadow first, a dark mass moving beneath the surface. Long, too long, it passed under our boat, and kept going, and kept going, and kept going. The river seemed too small for it. My heart slammed against my chest. I prayed in my own way, silently. "You're seeing it, aren't you?" Armando whispered without looking away. "Don't look away," I told him, "but don't stand up. Don't move." Then, in the middle of that whirlpool, something broke the surface. At first I thought it was an enormous log covered in mud, a dark, gleaming cylinder that rose through the water slowly. The water slid off it like rain off polished stone. But then I saw the pattern. Scales, large, dark scales pressed tightly together, some with scars, old cuts, marks from ancient battles. It kept rising, slowly, as if it had no hurry. I could only see a section of its body, and it was already as thick as the trunk of a ceiba tree. Armando was trembling, but he kept filming. It's a giant anaconda. It has to be an anaconda," he said, more to convince himself than me. Then the head appeared. First, the wide, flat, powerful snout. Then the eyes, two dark orbs with a strange glow, almost human, not the eyes of something that stares without understanding. These were eyes that knew exactly what they were looking at, and in that moment, those eyes fixed on us. I felt a cold that had nothing to do with the water. It was like that gaze was searching inside me, going through my fears, my memories, my guilt. All of it. The head finished rising, enormous, several meters above the surface. Water fell from its body like rain all around it. The river churned as if every part of the water was unsettled by the presence of its owner. I couldn't move, couldn't even blink. "Yakumama," I whispered, barely any air behind it. The serpent opened its mouth slowly, a dark hollow inside, curved teeth, a tongue that moved like a strip of wet shadow. She could have swallowed us both without effort. At that instant, Armando did the worst thing he could have done. He aimed a camera at her and fired the flash. The white burst lit up everything for 1 second. The scales, the fog, the open mouth. The Yakumama blinked, if a creature like that can blink. And then something shifted in her eyes. The stillness was gone. What I saw in those eyes was no longer curiosity. It was rage. The serpent released a sound that went through my entire body, a deep bellow like the whole river was screaming. The water exploded in waves around us. The boat lifted and nearly capsized. "Turn that thing off," I screamed at Armando. "I need to record. I need to—" He didn't finish. A blow knocked the camera from his hands. I don't know if it was the tail, part of her body, or the movement of the water itself. But the canoe lurched violently, and he fell backward, nearly into the river. I threw myself toward him, grabbed his arm, and hauled him back in. "Don't look into her eyes," I shouted close to his ear. "Don't provoke her any more." The Yakumama sank for a moment. For just a second I thought she was leaving. The river went quiet. "Is she gone?" Armando asked, gasping. "No. How do you know?" "Because she hasn't let us go yet." As I said that, the boat began to move on its own. No motor, no oars. It drifted toward the center of the whirlpool, as if an invisible current was pulling us. I tried the motor. Something was pulling it from below. The planks groaned like something enormous was tangling itself beneath the wood. We weren't invited here, I thought. She's testing us. In my head, the advice of the elders mixed with every story I had heard my whole life. The Yakumama was not just a monster. She was a force of nature, a kind of guardian of the rivers. She punished those who polluted, overhunted, or mocked what was sacred. And right now, I was sitting next to a man who had insulted her without realizing it. The waves kept rising, hitting the sides of the canoe. If she capsized us, there could be no time to swim. And even if we reached the bank, what do you do against something that can raise waves several meters high and swallow a man in one motion? I closed my eyes for a moment, and I spoke, low, almost a whisper. "What are you doing?" Armando asked. "Be quiet." I kept speaking. I don't know if it was prayer or pleading. "Mother of the water, we did not come here to harm you. This man doesn't understand. He is ignorant, not an enemy. We have not dirtied your river. We have not killed your creatures." The boat slowed slightly, as if something was listening. If you want to punish someone, punish me, but let him go, or better, let us both go, and I will make sure no one comes to disturb you again. I don't know how long I spoke. I felt Armando's heavy stare beside me, but I also felt another gaze, older, larger, rising from the water itself. The river suddenly stopped pulling. The invisible current dragging us toward the center of the whirlpool loosened. The waves calmed, though the water still moved, unsettled. Armando began crying silently. I had never seen him cry. Don't ever shout her name again, I told him. No, I won't. Don't ever strike the water. All right, all right. And when you get back to the city, don't laugh at what people told you here. I swear it, as if it had heard that promise. Something enormous slid beneath the canoe one more time. I felt it, heavy, cold, powerful. But this time it didn't pull us. It just passed. I started the motor, hands shaking, and managed to get it going. I began turning the canoe slowly, moving us away from the center of the river. Are we leaving now? Armando asked. He'd been asking for a while. As we traveled downriver, I noticed something on the bank I hadn't seen before. A stretch where the trees had been knocked flat, as if something had bulldozed through them, leaving a wide muddy path through the vegetation, a scar in the jungle, a trench that only something enormous could have made, dragging its body through. What is that? Armando asked, pointing. Where she comes out of the water, I said. He wrapped his arms around himself and shook. The camera was still lying at the bottom of the boat. Wet. Useless. Nobody spoke for the rest of the trip. The motor ran steadily, like a heart trying to calm itself. The jungle slowly reclaimed its sounds. Birds, insects, monkeys. As if everything was saying, she's gone, for now. When we reached the settlement, the sun was already going down. People watched from the bank. Some noticed we were coming in pale and silent. Don Eusebio was the first to approach. Did you find her? He asked. Armando opened his mouth, said nothing. I didn't speak either. I just nodded. The old man fixed his eyes on the outsider. Did you mock her? He asked. Armando shook his head quickly. No, sir, never again. That night Armando slept at a neighbor's house. The next day he left. He didn't want me to take him. He went on another boat with other people. He left thinner, quieter, older than when he arrived. I never knew if he told anyone in the city what he saw. I never knew if he said the Yakumama was real, or if he tried to explain it away with careful technical words, like unknown species, natural phenomenon, or collective suggestion. What I do know is what I felt. Years passed. I left the settlement, worked other jobs, but every time I had to cross a wide river, my heart would speed up. I would look at the water and remember those eyes, that feeling of something ancient watching you from below. Once, after a long time, I went back to visit my family. The settlement was almost the same. A few new houses, a few more children, a few fewer elders. At night, we sat and talked, and as always, the stories came out on their own. Someone mentioned the Yakumama. A young man laughed. That doesn't exist anymore, he said. Everything's been studied now. They're just large anacondas. I looked at him in silence. I saw Armando in him from years ago, confident, skeptical, sure of himself. I wanted to tell him not to play with that, not to go and provoke her, but I stayed quiet. I only said, "If you ever go upriver, don't shout her name. Don't strike the water. Don't throw garbage. If you hear a strange rumbling, turn back. And if the river goes too quiet, pray." That same night I couldn't sleep. I went out to the bank for a while, just to hear the water. The moon reflected off the surface, and the river moved quietly. I stood there looking at the dark water until I felt it again. Not a tremor, not an unusual current. A presence, like when someone is watching you from a window, even though you can't see anyone. Without thinking, I whispered, "Thank you for letting us go that day." The river kept its course, but for just a second, the reflection of the moon seemed to tremble, as if something enormous shifted below, settling into sleep. Many people say the Yakumama is just a made-up story, an old legend, no proof, no clear photographs, nothing but superstition. I don't argue. I don't try to convince anyone. In the end, each person believes what they want. But if you ever travel along a wide river, deep in the night, and suddenly the motor dies for no reason, and the water goes too still, and you feel something enormous moving slowly beneath your boat, remember this story. Don't call her. Don't provoke her. Don't say her name out loud. Just lower your head. Respect the river, and hope that tonight the mother of the water is not hungry, because I know what I saw. And I swear to you that in the deepest part of the jungle, something breathes under the water, something that protects, something that punishes, something that, when it opens its eyes, turns every horror story you've ever heard into nothing more than a whisper in front of the real darkness.